Good evening, everyone. I hope I am audible. Just mention it in the chat box that I am audible to you all. And let's start with the one of the most important topic for your upcoming Clat examination. That is your Ukraine-Russia issue. This is very important for both the previous slide, Kanishk. This is important for both the aspirant, whether it is CLAT or 2022 or 2023. Apart from it, for other law entrance examination also, this topic hold a lot of value. As we can see, it is one of the most important international issue that is going on and will continue for how many days. Let's see. So the session will continue in such a manner that we will be discussing each and every point that is only important for CLAT. So we are not going to discuss anything which is not relevant for CLAT. Only thing that we will be discussing will be relevant for CLAT only, because Russia and Ukraine issue is a very very big issue. Definitely this is going to be a long session, but we will cover only those points which are important from your CLAT perspective. Okay, because if you start taking into consideration everything that is happening and that has happened in the last 50 years after 1991, so it will take a lot of time, and that is not relevant for CLAT also. What is relevant for CLAT that we will be considering is in this session. So let's move to the first slide. The one thing that we all know, and every citizen, even every small kid know, is that the Russian president, that is Vladimir Putin, has declared war on the Ukraine. So this is a very common thing that every one of us know, even in the roads, in the public place, from India to in India, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, and then from India to America, America to China, China to Japan, and everywhere the same topic continues, that the Vladimir Putin has declared war. So now let's start with the history, that why this war has been declared, what is the reason for the war, what is going on currently, and everything we will discuss. Let's start first to understand about Ukraine, because this will be helping us in the next slide. Just a short details about Ukraine, then at the last we will again discussing about the present situation of Ukraine. But first we will understand a little bit about Ukraine, the country that is neighboring Ukraine, because it is very important for you to understand the next all the slide which are related to it. So the first important thing is that the Ukraine was a member of the Soviet Union till 1991, and in the year 1991 it was the Ukraine which received the independence. Okay, so it was not a independent country, it was a part of the Soviet Union. After 1991, that is in 1991, the Ukraine got its independence. Now this Ukraine is a very important for Russia. Why it is important? Whether it is strategically, whether it is geopolitically, economically, all things we will be understanding in the next 1 hour and 1.5 hour, whatever time it will be taking. But something what we have to know in introduction about Ukraine, this is very important to understand the next slide. So Ukraine, just keep in mind this all point, that Ukraine is the second largest economy and the eighth populous country in the whole of Europe. So second largest economy in the Europe means that is after Russia. So connected guys, as we will be moving forward, just go on connecting with every slide that we are talking, that the second largest economy in Europe is Ukraine. So you can understand this is one of the reason why it is very very important for Russia, because of the largest second economy and the eighth populous country. And one more point you have to understand, then in Ukraine it is not only the people of Ukraine, but 80% of some areas for the eastern Ukraine are having people from Russia, those who are the Russian citizens. So go on connecting. If you have any doubt, keep on mentioning it in the chat box, but make sure you are connecting the dots. It is very important to connect the dots. So as we have mentioned that Ukraine is the second largest economy. This is a very important point economically. That is the reason why Russia is somehow managing or trying to get a control over Ukraine, because of the second largest economy in the whole of Europe. This is a very important point that you have to mention. Now we come to the bordering of Europe. What bordering of Ukraine is very important. As you can see in the map, as the map shows you in the PPT, that the Russia is on the east of Europe, as you can see in the map. In the east of Europe, you have the whole of Russia, and the Belarus is on the north. On the top, you see you have the Belarus, and the most important country, that is the Baltic country of Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova, all surround the Ukraine in the west, which are the Baltic country of the NATO. What is NATO? How it is important? We'll be discussing, guys. But understand the map very carefully. That Ukraine on this side of the eastern side, Ukraine is having your Russia. Moving to the north path, on the top you have the Belarus. What is why Belarus is important today? In the Belarus, the negotiation between Ukraine and Russia is going on, guys. And then you have the Baltic country on this side, that is the western part, which are the NATO country. You have the Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova. These are the five Baltic country which covers Ukraine. So as a result, you can see this is the whole map which shows that what is the importance of Ukraine for Russia. If Russia is having a control over Ukraine, how much it is strategically, geopolitically a very important area for Russia. So this is something introduction about Ukraine, because you have to connect this slide with every slide that we are going to discuss next. Okay, so I guess this is clear to everyone. Just mention in the chat box. We will be moving to the next slides with that. Kanishk, yeah. Now let's come to some of the background of the crisis, because why this crisis is important. This is the most important thing. What is going on currently will not be asked in the Clat, because what is going on in every day from the last 4 days that they are attacking the people. Fighter jet is going on. This much of soldiers have died. This much of citizen has died. India is trying to bring its citizen back to India. This all event is going on. This is not something that Clat will be asking. Clat will be starting from its history. Why this crisis started, guys? You have to understand first. So as I have told you, there are various reasons why Ukraine is important for Russia. That is whether it is political, whether it is geopolitical, whether it is economic, and the most important is strategically. For Russia to become a world power, okay, it is very important to have a control over Ukraine, as we have seen in the last slide that Ukraine is the second economy in Europe. So as you can see, the first point mentioned that they are having a common cultural, linguistic, familiar link, because many of the Russian people are living in the eastern side of the Europe that we have discussed in the map. Understand, guys? uh, Try to rethink whatever we have discussed. Yeah, it is on the eastern side of the Ukraine, and you can see the Russia map. There you have the 80% of the population are the people from Russia. So it is very important to have a control of Russia over this area. Next slide. Yeah, so as you can see in the second point, it is mentioned that for many in Russia and in ethnically the Russian part of Ukraine, the heritage of the country is there. You have the emotional issues there for the military purpose, for the electoral purpose, for all this purpose. That part is very important for Russia. And as I have mentioned in the previous slide, that it is the second most powerful Soviet country. In 1991, Ukraine got the independence. That is first point. Now, after Russia, it is the second most powerful Soviet republic. So as a result, whether it is economically, whether it is culturally, whether it is strategically, it is a very important country, important aspect for Russia to have a control over whole of the Ukraine. This is the background that we are continuing, and it will continue for the next 2-3 slides, in which we'll be discussing that why this crisis has started. So first point you have to mention that strategically, Russia, it is very important for Russia to have a control over whole of Ukraine, and why all this we will be discussing. Next slide. Coming to starting with the history of 2004 and 2005, guys. First we have to understand the Orange Revolution. Let's first understand what was the Orange Revolution. In 2004, when the Ukraine president election was held, there was a there was protest and unrest in the country, because the people thought that there was some manipulation in the election result. There were malpractices in the result, there were corruption in the result, as a result of which the Supreme Court has told that the election result that have came out in 2004 was void, and finally Viktor Yushchenko was declared the winner of the re-election. Now, why this is the Orange Revolution? Because of the campaign color was orange, hence the name is Orange Revolution of 2004-5, guys. Don't think that this is not important. This, until and unless you will not understand Orange Revolution, you will not be understanding the attack of Russia on Crimea, and until and unless you will not understand what was the attack on Crimea, then only you will be in a position to understand that after the attack on Crimea and how all the series of events started. So with the Orange Revolution in 2004-5, only thing you have to understand, guys, that the corruption and malpractices the election was declared void by the Supreme Court, and Viktor Yushchenko was winner of that re-election. And why was it called the Orange Revolution? Because of the campaign color theme of this, Viktor Yushchenko was orange. So this was the Orange Revolution. But this civil unrest and the protest of the elections after the Orange Revolution did not stop there. The revolution and the civil unrest continued and continued, in which there was a demand that president, that is Viktor Yanukovych, should be removed, and the 2004 amendment should be initiated initially. In 2014 this started, that was the Euromedian movement, in which they told that the dignity of the whole Ukraine is under threat. So we want that the president of then president, who was Viktor Yanukovych, was should be removed, and then the 2004 amendment, in which Viktor Yushchenko was declared the winner candidate, it should be initiated at that point of time. So first we have the Orange Revolution of 2004 and 5, and then we have the Euromedian movement of 2014, in which the civil unrest continues from then, guys. Understand this point, that the civil unrest is continuing in the country for the dignity of the Russian people. This is very important. They are still continuing with the same protest in Ukraine. Then in the next slide we will be seeing, next slide. In the next slide we will be seeing that now Russia has annexed Crimea. Okay, now the annexation of Crimea took place in the year 2014. After the referendum was there, all thing happened, but from the 18th century we have to connect this. Okay, so what is Crimea? Let's first understand what is the Crimea. Crimea is a region in the Black Sea. What is Black Sea? We'll be discussing next. Okay, Crimea is a region in the Black Sea whose population was mostly the Russians, but even people from Ukraine and some people were that of the Crimea origin. Though those were the Crimean people. So you have the Crimea in the Black Sea area on the northern part. No, it is 2014, Mahima. Okay, yeah, it is 2014. So the Crimea is in the Black Sea in the Eastern Europe. The maximum population people were that of Russia, and then some people were from the Ukraine part and some from the Crimea, who were the Crimea origin people who were born in Crimea. They were the Crimean people. In the 18th century, guys, in the 18th century, what happened? Crimea was annexed by the Russian Empire. The Crimea, that country which is in the Black Sea, it was annexed by the Russian Empire, and after the Russian revolution that took place, it became an autonomous region in the Soviet Union. So Crimea was under the Russian Empire, under the control of Russian Empire. The Crimea was under the control of the Russian Empire, and it was an autonomous region in the whole of the Soviet Union. In 1991, we had the Ukraine leaving the Soviet Union and becoming an independent country. But here in the Crimea became a part of the Soviet Union, and then in 1954, this is very important, guys. The Soviet leader, who was Nikita Khrushchev, who was an Ukrainian by birth, he transferred the Crimea to Ukraine. Now there the protests start again. Okay. Now Russia claimed that because we annexed in the 18th century the Crimea comes under the Russian. Because in 18th century the Crimea was annexed by the Russian Empire. Therefore, Crimea is our part. But in 1954, when the Soviet leader, because it was an autonomous region in the Soviet Union, so this Soviet leader, that is Nikita Khrushchev, he transferred the Crimea to Ukraine, as a result of which, whether Crimea is part of Ukraine or whether Crimea is part of Russia, this dispute continues even in 2022, guys. You can understand it. I will be taking those points you left, Muhammad Ali. I will be letting you know. Okay. So the thing is that the Crimea dispute, that whether Crimea is part of Russia or whether the Crimea is part of Ukraine, that dispute continues even from 1954 till 2022. Now, in 1954, this whole thing happened, that that Crimea was transferred to Ukraine according to the Soviet leader. What is important in 2014? Because from 2014 the unrest went to a peak. After 2014, it is not something which is the Russia Ukraine crisis that you are seeing now. It is not something which has started 2 to 3 days before. Okay, in 2014, guys, what happened after the Ukrainian revolution? In the whole of Crimea area, there where the Russian troops were deployed. Okay, they were deployed in the whole of the Crimea region, and then there was a referendum in which 90% of the population. You must understand what is a referendum. Yeah, just a minute. You must understand what is a referendum. Referendum is where, just like a memorandum, you can understand, where the three party, four party, five party sit together and come to a conclusion. If you have read the recent dispute between the bordering region of Assam and all that area, there was also a memorandum side. You have the then different state are having different memorandum in India also, that is the northeastern state. They're having a memorandum among them. There was a memorandum post 2014 in which it was decided that 90% of the population of this Crimea, they favored that they will be joining Russia as a part. Okay, 90% of the population of Crimea told that we wish to join Russia. After the opposition and everything from the Ukraine side, Russia formally annexed Crimea. So still we have not given the power to Russia, or we do not recognize Crimea to be a part of Russia. This is one of the reason for the Russia-Ukraine crisis, guys. What I was trying to connect you from the last 5 minutes on this slide is that you had in 18th century the Crimea being attacked by the Russian Empire, Crimea becoming an autonomous region in the Soviet Union. After which 1954 you had the a Ukrainian by birth leader, that is Nikita Khrushchev. He transferred Crimea to Ukraine. That is also done. After post 2014, a referendum was signed in which 90% of the population of Crimea, they wanted to or they wished to join Russia. But there was a formal annexation by Russia. There was a opposition by Ukraine, and Russia told that I have annexed Crimea. Crimea is under me. Okay, Crimea is a part of Russia. But still today in 2022, in the 21st century, we still don't recognize. That is 18th century, guys. And today we are in the 21st century. Still we don't recognize Crimea. That is the international countries, international organization. They don't recognize Crimea as part of Russia. So this is one of the very important issue for the Russia-Ukraine crisis that you are watching from the last 4 days, that Russia has a demand that this Crimea should be recognized as part of me. Whether you are taking into consideration other aspects, whatever other aspect we'll be discussing, that NATO part and all those things. But the one of the demand that Putin has put forward is that the Crimea should be recognized as an part of Russia. So you understand this is a very important slide for your examination, that why Crimea, how Crimea was annexed by Russia, and what is the demand that is put forward by Putin. Still in 2022, the international bodies, the international law, international organizations don't think or don't they don't consider Crimea as part of Russia. Next slide, we come to the two very important agreement, that is the Minsk Agreement. So you must have read the whatever articles that we were sharing from the last 4 days, or in the Hindu Indian Express, or wherever, if you have made any notes on this topic, you must have heard about this agreement, that is the Minsk Agreement, which was between Russia and Ukraine. Understand, guys, after the Ukraine Orange Revolution we had in 2004 and 5, then we have the Euromaidan movement in 2014. The civil unrest continues from them. From that point of time, the civil unrest continues and it has not stopped. In 2014, we seen that a referendum was signed in which the Crimea people told that we will be joining Russia. We have very two important region here that is mentioned, the Donetsk and Luhansk region, that is the together, which is called the Donbas region. What happened, guys, in the eastern Ukraine border with Russia that we have seen in the first slide? That's why I have told you that to be very important. The first slide was very important. As you can see this slide, guys, just in the map, mark it. You can mark there. Then you have the Ukraine. You can point out there, that is the Ukraine and the Russia. Between the Ukraine and Russia, you have that border. Just in that dotted part, you can see you have Luhansk and Donetsk, the two important region, as you can see. So these together two are called the Donbas region. Okay. So now in this region, that is the Donetsk and Luhansk region, that is together called the Donbas region, which is the eastern Ukraine border with Russia, a civil unrest erupted. Okay. You must have remembered Crimea. What happened, guys? 90% of the population wished to join Russia. Remember that point. Same thing happened in this part also. In the Donbas region, now you can understand the Donbas region consists of two things, that is the Donetsk and the Luhansk. This is very important question for your Clat examination. In the Donbas region also, guys, the majority of the population are people who speak Russia, who are Russians, or who favor Russia. Three things are there. Either they speak Russian, or they favor Russia, or they are Russian only. So what happened after the 2014 Crimea attack and all the history that we have discussed in the Donbass region, guys, that is Donetsk and Luhansk, the civil unrest started, and the people of that particular part of region, that is the Donbass region, they wish to join Russia. Very important term this is, guys. The Donbass region people, who were mostly the Russian, they wish to join Russia. Okay, so this is a favoring thing for Russia, that I will be having a control over this part, and then it will be easier for me to have a control over the Ukraine part. After this, what happened, guys? On this border, that is the Donbass region border, which is the eastern Ukraine and Russia border, the Russian army was deployed there. Okay, there was the Russian army deployed there. On the same border, just we have the Indian Pakistan border. Definitely all the time there is Russian army, and we have there is Indian army, there is Pakistan army. In the similar manner, when the Russian army was deployed in the Donbass region, which is the eastern Ukraine border, at that point of time there were confrontation between the Ukraine military and the Russian military. There was a conflict between them which started. Is it clear, everybody, guys? I hope it is clear to everyone, this thing that we are discussing now, that at the border the military confrontation started between that of Ukraine military and the Russian military, okay, because of the people of this particular Russian people wish to join the Russian people in the Donbass region, wish to join the Russia part. Okay, now there was a daily confrontation that was being displayed between these two army. Just like after, for this to stop, this that was going on, this Ukraine Russia conflict, the military confrontation that was going on, just to stop this confrontation, in 2014 September, the Minsk Agreement was signed. Okay, the first agreement, that is the Minsk Protocol, Minsk 1, was signed, in which you have three, that is the trilateral contract between Russia, Ukraine and the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe. What is this organization? We will be understanding in the next slide. There is a separate slide for this. Minsk Agreement, what you have to understand, guys, is a tri-party agreement between Russia, Ukraine and the Organization of the Security and Cooperation in Europe, in which it was a ceasefire deal. Mention the recent ceasefire activity that was going on in India between which two country, India and which country? In the chat box, guys, recent ceasefire was going on between India and which country? Yeah, good. So this Minsk Agreement is a 12-point ceasefire, in which it was stated that there will be no weapon use, there will be exchange of prisoner, there will be humanitarian ground will be used. All this thing was mentioned in the 12-point ceasefire deal between Russia, Ukraine and the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe, that is an organization. This was the Minsk Agreement, but this did not stick, both the country did not stick to their point, and there was a violation of all the 12 points ceasefire that was mentioned. When the 2014 Minsk Agreement, the first agreement failed, after which in 2015 another agreement was signed by the same parties, that is the three parties, tri-party, Russia, Ukraine and Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe, and then they told that there will be more power will be given to the rebel control region. What is the rebel control region here, guys? The Donbass region. Okay, the Donbass region will be given more power in terms of the military action, in terms of the humanitarian ground, in terms of removal of the weapons from those regions, in terms of exchange of the prisoners in those regions. But that agreement also failed, because neither the Ukraine nor the Russia implemented the term and condition of the Minsk Agreement too. So there were two Minsk agreement. First was in 2014, between which was the tri-party agreement, and 2000, which was violated. Then again in 2015, another Minsk agreement was signed for giving more power to the rebel control region, that is the Donbass region, which include the Donetsk and the Luhansk. Okay, but because of the unimplementation by Russia and Ukraine, this Minsk agreement also failed, guys. So just previous slide, Kanish. So guys, what you have to, and I will be explaining the OSCE, don't worry, Mohammed Ali. Okay, I will be explaining you, don't worry. So guys, we had the Orange Revolution first. First, we had the Orange Revolution, then we had the Euromedian movement, we had the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014. Russia annexed it formally despite opposition from Ukraine, but still today in 2022 we do not recognize it internationally. We had the two Minsk Agreement, that is the 2015, 14 and 15. Now understand here, we will be moving next slide, be understanding the organization, that is the OSCE organization. But what you have to understand guys here, see, after this 2015 agreement broke down, don't use your notebook now, understand, this is the point from where the present day war has started. After this Minsk Agreement 2 that was signed in 2015 did not implemented, was not implemented, Russia in 2020, but the last 2 years before, in 2020, Russia sent its troops to the whole area of the eastern Ukraine border, that is the having of the Donbas region, which we have seen in the map. So in that whole region, Russia deployed its troops. Okay, Russia deployed its military there, and then in the last year 2021, in the September month of 2021 and October, in between the September and October, Russia deployed a lot of army in the whole region, in the whole border between Russia and Ukraine. All the ceasefire agreement went down, all the Minsk agreement failed, all was violated, and then in last year October 2021, Russia deployed n number of military army to the whole Donbas region and the border between Ukraine and Russia. So after Minsk agreement, you have to connect directly with the last 2 year. So it was just a simple confrontation between the army, that also it continued. The question was, I guess, of Siddharth or someone. So the confrontation between the army was continued from that time also. But at this point of time, Russia thought that it would be very important for me to now have a control over the Ukraine part, to have a big, to become a superpower in the world. To become a superpower in the world, it is very important to have the whole of Ukraine. And why Ukraine is important, we discuss in the first slide, guys. Okay. So in 2020 and 2021, mostly in 2021, in that is in the October month, the Russia deployed n number of troops in the whole eastern border of Ukraine, and then you have the Donbas region. Now let's understand the Organization for the Security and Cooperation in Europe in the next slide. So the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, guys, it is the largest security intergovernmental organization, which is having its headquarter in Vienna and Austria. Okay. Now the sole purpose of this Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe is to prevent the use of weapons. It support the promotion of human right. It is for the fair election, for the freedom of press. The objective of this organization is the prevent the use of arm and the weapon, the promotion of human right, freedom of press, and the fair election. So this is the intergovernmental organization which is having an observer status to United Nations. Let me know in the chat box, guys, what is the meaning of observer status. In the last class, in the last marathon, we have discussed it. So this Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, it is based in Vienna, Australia, and it is having a total of 57 members, of which India is not a part. Now for any decision regarding the weapon or the arms control, the promotion of the human right, freedom of press, for the fair election, with the majority consensus, the decision is taken in the Organization for Security and Cooperation. They get to be part of the meeting but don't get the voting right. Very good. Yeah, Kinjala, Priyamada, everyone, you're right. So the thing is, yeah, very good. So the thing I was discussing is that this Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe is one of the tri-party which between the Minsk Agreement, that is Russia, Ukraine, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation. They made a tri-party agreement in which, as the objective of this organization is to prevent the use of arms or the promotion of human rights. So you can understand why this was one of the party in the Minsk Agreement, guys. Done, guys? Is it clear to everyone in the those who are present in the meeting? Okay. So this is about the whole background of how the crisis, that present day crisis, the whole day that is going on in the news, whether it is national or international news, that you can see from the last 4 days, and that is the reason of all this crisis. Now we will be understanding in detail that why Ukraine is important for Russia. That is very important thing, guys. So I guess someone mic is on unmuted. Kindly mute yourself. So now let's move to the next slide, Kanishk. Okay, another important thing that you have to understand is the Black Sea. So what we have seen in one of the slide while we were discussing the annexation of Crimea. I guess someone mic is unmuted. Kindly mute. Okay, thank you. So yeah, here we have read that Crimea is a peninsular region in the Black Sea. So we have to understand what is the importance of the Black Sea. Black Sea, as the Crimea is in the a peninsular area in the Black Sea, automatically the Black Sea and the whole of Crimea is a very important geopolitical advantage of Russia. So what for the Black Sea, it is very important for Russia. Why? We will be discussing in the next points. That first of all, it is the important cross road and the strategic intersection. So for the entire region around the Crimea and the Ukraine and all that part, it is the intersection of the crossroad. Now every transport that is going on, every commodities that is transported will have to pass through the Black Sea. Okay, every commodity will have to pass through the Black Sea, where you have the Crimea and Russia. According to Russia, Crimea is the part of Russia. So having a control over the Crimea is important for Russia because it is a peninsular region in the Black Sea, and the Black Sea is the intersection of all the region. Okay, and then you have all the political power that will be given to Russia. You have the strategic power, you have the several adjacent region is connected to the Black Sea, so it would be easier for the Russia to have a good import and export from this whole thing, for the goods and for the energy. Okay, now what you have to remember for a Clat is the which are the bordering countries of Black Sea. Guys, read it very carefully. You have Russia, the second is Ukraine, then you have Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania. So leave the between the two one, that is Georgia and Turkey. Understand the significance of Black Sea from the thing that the bordering countries of Black Sea is Russia, Ukraine, and Romania and Bulgaria. The Baltic countries on the western part, the Baltic country on the western part, and then you have the Ukraine in the middle, and then you have the Russia on the eastern part. Guys, connect the dot how this whole area is very important for your Russia. The five Baltic country in which you have the Romania part. You have the Ukraine in the middle. You have the Russia at the eastern part. So this is the bordering part of the whole Black Sea. And so if the Russia is having a control over Ukraine, you can understand that the whole significance of Black Sea will be delivered to Russia. So this is the Black Sea that you have to understand, the bordering countries, and what is the advantage of the Black Sea, that it would be easier for the Russia, whole of Russia, for the export and import to the entire region. Okay, next slide. Now coming to why the present aggression, that was the history that we discussed. Ki 2020, in the 2021 and 2020 October, the Russia has deployed its troops in the border of the Ukraine, eastern part of the Ukraine. But two important things that you have to understand, and the second point, that is a geopolitical and strategic factor. This is one of the, you can say, means the only and the most important factor of the present day crisis. One of the student, I don't remember name, Siddharth or someone asked me that why it took 5 years. You will be getting your answer now, Siddharth, that because in the last 2 years, what we have seen, Siddharth, that the NATO are very much in a eagerly way, or it is very much waiting to include Ukraine in the NATO part. But Russia is a big opposer that Ukraine in any chance should not become a part of NATO. Okay, so because in the last 2 years there is a lot of consultation and consensus that is going on in the NATO, that Ukraine will be included in NATO. So it has become, in the last 2 years, the matter has went to its peak. First, but understand the economic factor. As I have told you in the first slide also, that the Ukraine is the second most biggest economy in the whole of Europe. So it is very important for Russia to have a control over Ukraine. If Russia is having a control over the Ukraine, it will be economically a very beneficial thing for it. Also, the Russia has asked the Ukraine to become a member of Eurasian Economic Community, which is a free trade agreement that was signed in 2015. But Ukraine has rejected this to join the agreement. But this Eurasian Economic Community, if Ukraine would have joined the Eurasian Economic Community in 2000, when Russia demanded it, it would have given a lot of agriculture and every market output to the whole of Russia only. Okay, agriculture control and the industrial control all will be coming under Russia, but Russia has rejected to, or Russia has refused to join the Eurasian Economic Community that was signed in 2015. Second point, guys, the geopolitical and strategic factor, you can say this is the only and only factor for the present day crisis that is going on, is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which has called for including Ukraine as a member. We will be discussing NATO after 2 to 3 slides whenever it will be coming. But yeah, sure. So so Russia has claimed that if Ukraine will be included in the NATO, it will be a very difficult, it will become a very difficult task for Russia to have a control over Ukraine, guys, because NATO is something which talks about peace and humanity. Mark my words. NATO talks about peace and humanity. Article 4 and 5 of NATO that we'll be discussing in the next 15 or 10 to 15 minutes. Just have a patience. We will be discussing Article 4 and 5 of NATO. It tells that if any member is being threatened, the whole NATO will have a consensus to support that member. Now guys, you understand, आज जो war हो रहा है, that is between Russia and Ukraine, if Ukraine would have been the part of NATO, it would have been very very difficult for Russia to control or even attack NATO, even attack Ukraine, not NATO, sorry. अगर आज Ukraine, if Ukraine have been a part of NATO today as of 28th February, it would have been very very difficult, guys, to Russia to attack Ukraine. Now Russia wishes that I will be having a control over whole of Ukraine because it is economically, politically, strategically, it is very important to me. Okay, now last 2 years there was a consensus that NATO will be having Ukraine. So this is a very big demand that Putin placed 2 days before also in the press conference. If you have seen it on the any of the news channel or in the Twitter also, that this is one of the most important demand that Putin is making, that promise me, the NATO member, the Western European country, and even the America has to give a promise that they will not add the Ukraine to NATO. If Ukraine will be added to NATO, definitely the whole it will be a very very security, all the security guarantee that it will be getting. It will be very difficult for Russia to have a control over Ukraine, guys. Is it this point clear? Very important. If it is not clear, I will repeat it once again, guys. Please let me know. This is the most important part of today's session. That is the Ukraine in NATO. Let me know if it is clear to everyone. I want everyone to respond. And if anyone, don't go with the majority. If any one of you want to have a, if you want to let me know you once again this point, I will be mentioning it. That is not a big deal for me.
Can you repeat it?
Sure.
Aaryan?
Yes, sure. Yeah, just a moment. Can you just move to a previous slide once? Yeah. Okay, move to the next slide. Abhiraj, I guess it is done. So yeah, so we are discussing, first was the economic factor, that is done, guys. Most important thing that is, because that is going on from the last 2 years, is Ukraine joining NATO, that is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Russia, I will be sharing the slide, don't worry. So North Atlantic Treaty Organization may, if Ukraine would join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, it would be very very difficult for Russia to have a control over Ukraine. Why, guys? Understand this point once again. For a member of NATO, you have Article 4 and 5 that we will be discussing in the next 10 minutes, don't worry. According to that two article, that is Article 4 and 5, whenever any member of the NATO is being attacked by any country, whenever any member of NATO is being attacked by any country, the whole NATO will having a consensus, the whole NATO will be supporting that particular country. Take the example, just a hypothetical example, कि अगर यूक्रेन आज, अगर यूक्रेन एज ऑफ 28 फरवरी 2022 अगर यूक्रेन नाटो का पार्ट होता, तो रशिया जिस तरह से अटैक कर रहा है, जिस तरह से उसके सोल्जर्स को गिरा रहा है, जिस तरह से सिटीजन्स को प्रॉब्लम कर रहा है, ह्यूमन राइट का वायलेशन कर रहा है, इंटरनेशनल लॉ का वायलेशन कर रहा है, it would not be easy for Russia to do as it is doing today from the last 4 days, guys. बिकॉज नाटो के जो मेंबर्स होते हैं उनको एक सिक्योरिटी एग्रीमेंट देना पड़ता है कि अपने मेंबर को तो हम टच करने जा ही नहीं रहे हैं, और अगर मेरे मेंबर को कोई टच करता है, इफ आई एम हैविंग 50 मेंबर, फॉर एग्जांपल नाटो डोंट हैव 50 मेंबर, अगर मेरे में 50 मेंबर है, ठीक है, तो अगर उसको कोई टच करता है तो सारे मिलके हम तो सपोर्ट करेंगे, उस पर्टिकुलर कंट्री को जिसको अटैक हुआ है जिसके ऊपर. तो रशिया और नाटो जब आपका रशिया और यूक्रेन, व्हेन बोथ ऑफ देम विल बी पार्ट ऑफ नाटो, हाउ कैन रशिया इवन इमेजिन गाइस टू अटैक नाटो, attack Ukraine? Okay, how can even Russia imagine to attack Ukraine, because both of them will be part of NATO. So guys, इसीलिए Russia has made a clear demand. Even 2 days before in the press conference, Putin has made it very clear that I want the promise from the whole, I want the promise from the whole Western countries, that they will not be including the Ukraine in the NATO. I hope Utsav this is now clear.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay, just a minute. If there is a conflict in two NATO member, yeah, that I told Pankaj that अगर दो NATO member के बीच, see, when they are becoming a member of NATO, they have to give the security guarantee. Okay, they have to give the security guarantee that I am not going to make a attack on the NATO member. And if a member of the NATO is being attacked by any other country, I have to support him. तो यहाँ तो नाटो के दो मेंबर के कंट्री के बीच में ही वार हो जाता ना, अगर आज यूक्रेन नाटो का पार्ट होता तो. So this is the strategic factor, and this is one of the most important factor for the present day crisis that you are seeing in the news channel and everywhere. Now let's move to the next slide. Coming to why Putin wants Ukraine. These are the comprehensive questions that you will be getting in your Clat examination. You will not be getting who is the president of Ukraine. You will not be getting who is the prime minister of Ukraine. You will not be getting that Ukraine is located in Europe or Ukraine is located in America or which region. You are not going to get that, guys. These are the strategic question that Clat gives. The examiner who is making the question paper is himself a strategic people. So let's understand point wise that why Putin wants Ukraine. First, as I have been mentioning from the last 45 minutes, guys, that Ukraine is a matter of strategic importance to Russia. Whether it is economically, geopolitically, politically, for everything, it is very important for Russia to have a control over Ukraine. As we have seen in the first slide, that it is the second biggest economy in the whole of Europe, guys. Now, if Russia is having the control over Ukraine, in which the eastern people 90% are Russian, so you can imagine how it would be becoming a superpower. Okay, now Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Okay, Russia wants a red line, as the alliance could make it launch pad for NATO missiles which are targeted at Russia. Russia is not a member of NATO, that we are discussing that we discussed in the previous slide also, that since Russia is not a member of NATO, if it would become a member of NATO, it would be very difficult for Russia to have a control over Ukraine, which it has been thinking from the last so many years. Okay, now Ukraine has major port on the Black Sea. Okay, and it share border with 4 NATO area. So these ports of Ukraine, the ports that is present in the Ukraine, Russia want to have a control over this port for its export of goods as well as energy. Russia is the biggest producer of oil. Am I true or wrong, guys? Russia is the biggest producer of oil in the world.
Second biggest.
Okay, people are mentioning true, but some has mentioned second. Okay, it is the second. Russia is the second biggest oil producer, guys. Okay, now this port on the Black Sea of Ukraine will be used by Russia for its exports of goods, energy, crude oil. This will be used. So Russia wishes to have a control over Ukraine. Another very important thing, guys, Russia share border with 4 NATO nations that we have discussed in the first slide of the map. The western country, that is Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Moldova. This all the 4-5 countries are on the western part of the Ukraine, which is the Baltic country, and Russia, Ukraine is having a border with them. Now imagine, guys, if Russia is having control over Ukraine, that means it will be Ukraine which will be sharing border with these areas. that is the 4 NATO area. So instead of moving from the eastward regions to the west and then coming to the western part and having a export and import of commodities, it would be very easy for Russia to directly have a exchange of all the commodity. And when it will be sharing border with the 4 different NATO nations, you can understand its importance, its significance in NATO itself. In the organization itself, you can understand the significance of Russia. So this is one of the reason. Then then Ukraine is the major exporter of corn and wheat, so it wanted, this is some very simple. Now the whole of Europe depend for the 1/3 of the natural gas on Russia, and one of the main pipeline you can see in the map, guys, that is the Nord Stream pipeline, Ukrainian pipeline. You have the Turkish pipeline, you have the Iran, Iraq, Syria pipeline. So for the natural gas, for 1/3 of the natural gas, guys, of the Europe comes from Russia. Okay, but the pipe you can see, it is of Turkish, Iraq, Syria, Ukrainian. If Russia is having a control over Ukraine, guys, that pipe will be of Russia. It will be very, 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 very easy for Russia to share this, to transfer this natural gas to the whole of Europe. Am I making sense to everyone, guys? That if that particular, that is the Ukrainian pipeline that you can see in the diagram, if it is under the control of Russia, it will be very easy for Russia to transfer, to export his natural gas to the whole of Europe. Okay, so these are the reason why Putin wants Ukraine, because of the strategic importance, economic, political, geopolitical, and everything. And two are the most important is the Black Sea, NATO, and then you have the pipeline that pass through Ukraine. Coming to the next slide, guys, will be discussing that what is the stand of different nation, because these are the general type of question that is generally asked. First, we will be definitely coming to United States. Definitely United States, as you can see from the last 4 days, sanction pe sanction, sanction pe sanction, sanction pe sanction. That is not tariq here. There is sanction. So United States, जो है sanction pe sanction, it is on everything, investment, trade, financing, everything. There is a lot of prohibition that is put by United States. Then you have the Japan, which is also putting sanction. You have the European Union, which is condemning it as a violation of the Minsk Agreement. You have United Kingdom, which has put a lot of sanction. Australia has also has put that the actions are unacceptable. That is a common thing that every international countries, and these are the bigger countries, so इनके बारे में हमें discuss करना था कि most of them are putting sanction every day now. Even Canada has yesterday put sanctions. Every big country are putting sanction today. You must have read, if you have read, that FIFA has also objected for the Russia, that there will be no flag of Russia. FIFA जो है रशिया में होगा नहीं. So these are all the laws that Russia has to bear. Okay, this is the stand of different nation. Talking about in the next slide the stand of India. भाई इंडिया तो हमारा बहुत ही शांत कंट्री है ना. तो इंडिया का है कि डिप्लोमेटिक तरीका से शांतिपूर्वक क्वाइटली आप बात कीजिए, इट वुड बी बेटर. So guys, when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, there was the condemnation by every Western country, every big power. Is my voice breaking, Priyamvada Kinjla? Okay, thank you. So yeah, thank you. So at that particular point of time also, India did not join the Western power. हमारा इंडिया क्या है भाई, न्यूट्रल रहेगा, और जब वोटिंग करने का टाइम आएगा, it will abstain itself. Okay, so India has told that there will be diplomatic तरीका से matter, you solve this matter diplomatically. Even in the United Nations, it has suggested that this matter should be solved diplomatically. You must have seen yesterday and day before yesterday when there was a voting in the against the resolution, India told that I will abstain from voting. Let me know the 3 countries which abstain from voting, guys. Let me know how much you have read about the Russia-Ukraine issue. Which are the 3 countries? Very good, Mahima. So China, UAE, and India are the 3 countries. Very good, everyone. Are the 3 countries that has abstained from voting. So this is the stand of India, and definitely Russia will be welcoming this stand that ठीक है भाई, तुम मेरे सपोर्ट में तो मत ही आओ, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, मुझे जरूरत भी नहीं है, but don't support Ukraine. Just be a neutral partner, and it is important. Right? Ukraine and Russia both are important to India, and India wants the diplomatic thing, whatever it is. So this is the stand of India. But even India and every country in the world is facing a lot of issue and problem, economically or politically, because of this Russia-Ukraine war. So this is the stand of India, that diplomatically आप बात कीजिए. Next slide. Let's discuss. Ab India has told ki India Prime Minister even called the Russian president and they talk and everything is going on. But definitely the war is having a very big effect on India. What happened after the Cold War? After the Cold War that happened, this is the biggest problem that is going on, as a result of which the country will be facing inflation. Those who were present in my budget session or those who have watched on the YouTube, connect from there, guys. We have discussed that export and import concept कि export हर समय ज़्यादा होना चाहिए और import कम होना चाहिए. Am I right, guys? Everyone is okay. Yeah, good. Some are telling yes, some are telling no. Two yes, two no. Utsav and everyone. Okay, now I'm getting the correct response. Yeah, definitely the exports should be more and imports should be less. Yeah, now see, understand this point, that as we know, discussed in the last slide, that Russia is the second largest oil producer. Definitely because of the war, the price of the crude oil and the coal is going to increase. The price of the crude oil and the coal is going to increase. Now when India will be bringing the crude oil and coal, when India will be importing crude oil and coal from this Russia, definitely the price has increased. So the amount that India was paying 4 days before, the total amount that India was, the expenditure that India was doing in its import, definitely as of 28 February, it has been increased. The import, the price that India, the expenditure that India is doing on import has increased. When the import has definitely increased, as a result of which, when the import has increased, what will happen, guys? There will be fiscal deficit and the value of rupee, the value of Indian rupee will depreciate in the Indian market. This is the reason, this is the most important effect that the war is happening on India. You, whatever you mentioned, the in the second point it is mentioned that India stock locked their second worst day, and then India is the 25th trading partner. That is all important, but the most important is the depreciation of the Indian rupee and the inflation. So as it is mentioned in the first point, that after the Cold War, this is the biggest problem that would result in inflation. This is the biggest problem that would result in inflation. And then in the budget session and in the monetary policy classes, guys, we have discussed the accommodative monetary stance, in which I have told that because of the corona pandemic, the RBI has decided to increase the accommodative monetary stand. What is the accommodative monetary stand, guys? That the money supply that the RBI will be doing in the market was increased because of the corona pandemic, because people were not ready to buy things. There were a lot of job, many people lost their job. Now when the people did not have the money in their hand, तो वो मार्केट में खरीदेंगे कहां से? When the people will not buy in the market, there will be no demand, then the demand supply concept will get down, and then there will be a fiscal deficit. Okay, yeah, Ambika, very good. So with the accommodative monetary stance, the RBI had decided to increase the supply of the money. The flow of money supply was decided to be increased by the accommodative stance, but because of the inflation, because of the depreciation of the rupee value, guys, because of the war, finally, we are coming to that point only, that finally that is the war. So because of the inflation, because of the rupee depreciation, the RBI will be forced to withdraw the accommodative monetary stand. This is the effect of the war on India. Okay, next slide. We will be discussing in the next slide about the effect on the stock market, because this was a very important topic, or you can tell that something which was going on in the news for more than 10 to 12 hours. What happened when a war occurred, guys, in the stock market? You must have seen on the first day of the war, if you have watched the news, that stock market Sensex itna pe band hua. If you have watched any Hindi news channel, or if you have seen even on the Twitter, that सेंसेक्स जो है इतना पे गिरा, सेंसेक्स इतना गिर गया, स्टॉक मार्केट इतना गिरा, सेंसेक्स इतना पे बंद हुआ, रूपी डेप्रिसिएटेड इतना, दिस ऑल थिंग यू हैव मस्ट हैव रीड, आई एम गेसिंग. Now when the war is going on, guys, yeah, very good, Avirat. So I must say that you are investing in the share market. So on the first day, when the war happened, guys, instead of people investing in the stock market, people will start investing towards the safe haven. What is safe haven, guys? We have discussed the bond scheme, the gold bond scheme. We have discussed the gold concept, if you remember the budget classes and the monetary classes, guys. Key people, sometimes what people do, that instead of keeping the money in the house, or instead of keeping the money cash in the locker of the bank, they invest it in the form of bond and gold. Okay, you must know, even if you were not present in the class, this is a very layman term. Okay, this is something which is not very economic term. If the people do not wish to keep the money in the house or in the bank locker, the cash, they invest it in the form of bond and gold. The investment in gold and bond, guys, is considered to be a safe haven. That is the gold bond scheme, if you have read in your Clat examination time. So when the people invest in the bond scheme, that time the investment in the stock market decreases, because people will move towards the safe haven. Safe haven, as the name suggests, कि stock market में price there will be fluctuation. इतना गिरेगा, someone has told also just now. But the safe haven, the bond value don't change. The bond value don't change at a particular point of time, even on the effect of the war. So instead of stock market, people have moved toward investing in the safe haven. Gold is clinging to 13-month peak, and this is very important, guys. Why I have mentioned this slide at this point, that in the forex market, if you have heard, I guess most of you have heard the forex market. In the forex market, according to the economic expert of the world, the Swiss currency is now considered to be the safest thing. The Swiss currency is considered to be the safest currency as of now during this Russia-Ukraine issue for the forex market. So this is the effect of the stock market. We discuss. I will be letting you know, Muhammad Ali, and we discuss what is the effect on India. India will be seeing the inflation, depreciation of the rupee, and then we will be having the accommodative stance being withdrawn by the RBI. Stock market, people are not investing in stock market, people are investing in the safe haven, that is in the form of bond. Gold has also clinged to 13-month peak, and the Swiss currency is considered to be the safest thing. Okay, next slide. Now come to the present circumstances. That Putin made a press conference. Every time, after every 2 hours, he is doing a press conference. That is another thing. But in one of the press conference, Putin told that I will be ending the war. Tell me, assure me on 3 points. Very important, guys, 3 points. First, he warned that the US and the NATO will give a promise, give an assurance that they will never allow the Ukraine to join the NATO. So guys, whatever I am speaking from the last 1 hour, come and conclude on the same point again, that NATO should not become a part of, Ukraine should not become a part of NATO. This is the most important thing, as I've told you in that slide also, that the joining of Ukraine as a member of NATO is the biggest problem, biggest opposition by Russia. So he has very clearly pointed out that I want assurance from the NATO member, from the US, that they will not be allowing the Ukraine to join the NATO. Second point, as we have discussed in the third or the fourth slide, that they want the international recognition of Crimea as part of Russia. So we have read in the last point in the 2014, after 2014, whatever happened, although Russia annexed Crimea despite opposition from Ukraine, but still today the international law, the international organization, the international world, the Western world don't recognize Crimea as part of Russia. So Putin sir ने बोला कि I want Crimea to be recognized as part of Russia. That means Crimea will be part of Russia. All the international bodies will recognize the same. International law will apply the same. Okay. Yeah. Half of the weapon supply, halt of the weapon supply by the Western countries. Okay, they want that the Western countries, that is the all the European part and the NATO part, Ukraine want that there should be no weapon should be supplied to Ukraine. Why, guys? If Ukraine is not supplied with any kind of weapon, there will be not lot of arms that will be present in the Ukraine. Okay, if Ukraine sometimes need also the weapon, definitely it will be moving toward Russia. If the Western countries stop giving arms to Ukraine, then definitely Ukraine will be moving towards Russia for the arms. Okay, so these were the three conditions that Putin puts before the international countries and the international bodies, that these are the three things. You take this thing, assured me of this three things, I will be ending the war. But today is the fourth day, and we must salute the people of Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, and everyone on Ukraine who are kind of fighting from the last 4 days with with their all body and might to save their country, guys. This is the condition. Next slide. Now let's have some basic facts about Ukraine. This is a very, as I've told you in the beginning, this would be going to be a long session, guys, because the issue is already a very big issue. Just you have to know this point, because if in one of the questions they tell that which of the following is not true about Ukraine, this point will be mentioned there. So if you don't know any of the following, you will be getting either a negative, or if you don't attempt, you will be getting a one score less, and 1 marks is very very important in Clat examination. So let's understand the capital of Ukraine, that is Kiev. And as we have seen that Russia is trying its level best, guys, from the last 2 days to have a control over the Kiev, but it has not been successful yet. And then you have the currency of Ukraine, that is the Hryvnia. You have the language, that is Ukrainian. You have the continent, that is Europe. You have the president, that is Vladimir Zelensky, and then that is Volodymyr Zelensky, and then you have the prime minister, that is Denis Semhel. And according to the World Health Organization, Ukraine is the 6th largest alcohol consuming country, and it is the first country in the world to give up the nuclear arsenal. This sum up everything about Ukraine, which we discussed in the first slide, Kanish, that we discussed that Ukraine is the second biggest economy in the Europe, and everything that we discussed in the first slide. And then we have this slide, this sum up everything of Ukraine that you will be asking your Clat examination. Okay, that is the capital, the currency, the language, the continent, the president, vice prime minister, according to the World Health Organization report, and the nuclear arsenal. Nuclear arsenal is something similar to the, you have the bomb, atomic bomb, nuclear weapon. It is similar one thing, that is nuclear arsenal. So it is the first country in the world to give up the nuclear arsenal, guys, Ukraine. Okay, so this is all about Ukraine. Now let's move to the next slide and know about the important thing, that is your NATO. So North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I remember when I was preparing for Clat examination, guys, in one of the mock, I had first question, there was some passage on NATO, and the first question that was given to us was, what is the other name of NATO? So I thought that by NATO, it is North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and all the 4 options that was mentioned in the mentioned to me, none of them have something familiar to NATO. And generally whenever we get a full form, guys, it comes to our mind that अच्छा NATO है, या फिर USA, so it is United States of America, UN, so it is United Nation. But none of the 4 options was having this the 4 term, that is the NATO letter. So I left that question anyway. So that's why I have mentioned it very rightly here, that North Atlantic Alliance, the other name of the NATO is North Atlantic Alliance. This is very important for you guys to know. There should definitely be a difference between student preparing in lighting team and the student preparing elsewhere among the 50,000 aspirant that will be given Clat. So the 4 question everyone will be marking, but this question will make a difference, guys. Understand this thing. Now, NATO. What is NATO? It is an intergovernmental military organization, as the name suggests, guys, that we discussed in the last 2 slides. That it tells that 2 मेंबर के बीच में तो वॉर होने का कोई चांस ही नहीं होता है. Even if a member is attacked by any other country, there will be a consensus, and every country will be every countries or every member of NATO will be protecting that member which has been attacked. So it is a military alliance between 28 European countries and 2 North American countries. So the total number of countries is, guys, 30. Remember it. Don't go for 28 2 or something like that. 28 is the European country, because if the examination goes too much in deep, we should be always ready for the worst. That is, and that for also Clat examination, for any competitive examination, we should be ready for the worst. 28 European countries and 2 North American country. Then they will be giving 28 American country, 2 North European country, or they will be changing the option. So you have to know everything very nicely. NATO was founded on 4th of April 1949, which is headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. And as you can see, I've mentioned it. They mentioned that it is having 30 countries. Okay. Now, this is also very important question. If the question comes from NATO, they will be directly asking, guys, that which of the following is true about NATO. They will not be asking all these questions separate wise. Because एक passage से definitely maximum that will be 6 question. Definitely 5 is the general question average, and you will be getting maximum, that is 6. So they can directly ask you which of the following is not true about NATO. Okay, so the recent member that has been added to NATO is the North Macedonia on 27 March 2020. Guys, mention it in your notebook. And the last point, as a point itself suggests, that if Ukraine will become a part of NATO, Why it will be difficult for Russia to have a control over Ukraine? That the purpose of the NATO is to freedom and security of a member through political and military means. If Ukraine had been a part of NATO today, every country of NATO would be sending its army, its fighter jet, its every aircraft and everything to Ukraine. So imagine guys, then would it be possible for Russia to have a control over Ukraine in that case? So the purpose of the NATO itself suggests that why Russia do not want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. Okay, that is all about NATO. Now let's move to the next slide. Now NATO we have discussed, that is a political and geopolitical thing, Abhipraya, that if we are starting that thing that will take time. Let's first cover the main thing that we'll be discussing, okay, after the main thing is covered. Now NATO we have discussed what is NATO, about all its function and organization, what are the latest development after the Russia Ukraine war. Okay, so NATO has activated its 40,000 strong response force for the first time, guys. What is this? You must have seen in the map that we discussed in the first slide, guys, that the 5 countries on the western part of Ukraine are the Baltic country which are part of NATO. Today, the negotiation between Russia and Ukraine is going on in Belarus. The 5 countries on the western part of Ukraine are the part of the NATO, that is the Baltic country, guys. In these 40 in these 5 countries, the 40,000 strong response force sorry, the 40,000 strong response force has been activated. They are being sent there. Apart from this, the NATO chief, that is Stoltenberg, remember the name, he has told that our forces are at every 30 location, whether it is on land, sea and air, along with 100 fighter jet has been deployed. Okay guys, so NATO has activated its strong why, see, this is important. Why? Because for the first time in the history, NATO has activated his strong response force. So this is first important thing. NATO chief Stoltenberg has told that we have deployed our army, our soldier on the land, sea and air, and that at the 30 location, as we have read in the last slide, there are 30 member of the NATO. So they have deployed its fighter jet army to all this location. Article 4 has been invoked by some of the NATO members, which is very important, guys. That I had been discussing from the last half an hour. You can consider when we started talking about why NATO and Ukraine. I even repeated for some of you when you asked that when a member state feels threatened by another country, all the members start consultation, and they will be giving a support to that member which is being feel threatened. Guys, understand the difference between Article 4 and 5. Article 4 states that when a member country feels threatened, but Article 5 tells that when a member country is attacked, there will be an alliance of all the NATO member and they will be supporting that country or that member which has been attacked, guys. Is it clear the difference between Article 4 and 5, guys? Article 4 says that a member country feels threatened, there will be consultation among the NATO member. Article 5 tells that when a member country is attacked, every member country, the 30 member country will be, the remaining 29 member country will be supporting that particular country which has been attacked. Guys, is it been clear to everyone? Now, Article 4 was invoked last time when, this is very important, guys. Article 4 was invoked last time when the Turkey was being attacked by Syria, and Article 5 was used only once when the US was attacked by Al Qaeda in 2005. Okay, am I making sense to everyone? I cannot see the response in the chat box, guys. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you, got it. So Article 4 has been invoked last time by Turkey when it was attacked by Syria. Okay, and then you have Article 5 which was being used only once in the history, that is when the US was attacked by Al Qaeda. So this is the difference between Article 4 and 5, that when a member state feels threatened and when a member state is attacked. This is the difference, and this is the latest development by NATO. Another thing that you have to understand is that, yeah, thank you, Pankaj. Another thing that you have to understand is that Russia has invoked martial law. Okay, guys, martial law. What is martial law? That is the full control of that particular country goes to the army. So the administration is under the army control. You can read the slide mentioned that it referred to a situation where military authorities runs the civil administration as per their rules and regulations and the ordinary law. For example, if martial law is invoked in India, for example, so the Indian Penal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure, the Civil Procedure, the Constitution Law, the all the amendment and the preamble all will stop, and according to the rules and regulation of the Indian Army, Military, Navy, whatever it is, they will be running our country. They will be running the administration of our country. This martial law. This martial law has been borrowed from the English common law, and nowhere in the Indian Constitution it is mentioned. Nowhere in the Indian Constitution it is being mentioned about the martial law. But Article 34 is there that there will be some restriction on the fundamental right when the martial law is in force in the territory of India. So when is martial law introduced, as we can understand, then it is a situation of war, rebellion, riot, violence, resistance. At that point of time, instead of the government, it will be the military. It is the it is the military which will be taking the care of the administration. That is the martial law which has been invoked. So you have to understand that it is where the military authorities will run the civil administration as per the rules and regulation. Now national emergency is where you don't get the military as the administration running of the administration. You have the fundamental right being violated, being put a halt. There is restriction on the fundamental right, but the whole administration of our country does not get to the military. We have for the martial law, we have the military which will be running the administration. Okay, so as the last point mentioned, that the military authority gain abnormal power when martial law is under operation. Okay, thank you, Premada. Next slide, Kanish. Now, this is very important again for your Clat examination, that is United Nations, because war is going on between Russia and Ukraine. You must be thinking NATO is a member to that war, but why we are discussing United Nations? Because the matter had reached the United Nations and the resolution was initiated and everything. We will not be commenting on the use of United Nations. So let's come talk about United Nations. What is important that we will be discussing. Okay. United Nations was formed after the devastating World War II, and it is a successor of the League of Nations. So before the World War II, we had the League of Nations whose function was similar to League of Nations. But according to all the member country, how many member country guys in United Nations? As of now, they felt that the League of Nations has failed to achieve the peace and security and target which was its sole purpose. Okay, so the people, yeah, very good. So the people, not the people, that is the country, the country decided that instead of League of Nations, we will be having the United Nations. Can anybody tell me that how many okay, it is mentioned there in the slide, so it is no need to ask to you that the representative of the 50 government met in San Francisco in 1945. The charter was drafted, and on 25th June the charter was adopted, guys, and it came into force on 24th October 1945. Which day is celebrated as United Nations Day, guys? Mentioned in the chat box. So understand, when the League of Nations was demolished or it was deactivated, yeah, good, after which United Nations was formed, and it came in the Charter of United Nations was adopted on 25th June 1945, and it came into effect on 24th October 1945, on which day we celebrate the United Nations Day, guys. Now let's understand the structure of the United Nations. Yesterday in the marathon I have asked you people that what is the structure and which has how many organs are there of the United Nations. So you have here on the screen, we have the General Assembly, we have United Nations Security Council, we have Economic and Social Council, we have International Court of Justice, and we have the United Nations Secretariat. Tell me the answer that where is the headquarter of United Nations, and also tell me the answer that where is the headquarter of International Court of Justice, guys. So the structure of United Nations include the General Assembly, United Nations Security Council, you have the Economic and Social Council, you have the International Court of Justice. Very good. Okay, you have the International Court of Justice, you have the United Nations Secretariat. Okay, ICJ, Ambika, recheck, it is Hague, Netherlands, ICJ. Okay, yeah, Manas, you're right. Now the fifth principle, that was the Trusteeship Council, it was suspended in 1994 after the independence of Palau. Okay, so you have as of now only 5 guys, not 6. Yesterday we discussed in the marathon, we have only 5 member of organ of United Nations, that is General Assembly, United Nations Security Council, Economic and Social Council, ICJ, and UN Secretariat. And as you have mentioned in the chat box, the headquarter. The sixth principal organ, that was the Trusteeship Council, it was abolished in 1994 after the independence of Palau. Now let's just something more about United Nations, because Clat don't ask such a silly question. They will be asking something in detail. That is the Security Council, guys. Why we will be only understanding the Security Council? Understand this point, because United Nations is one part, Security Council is the organ, but the resolution that was brought by Russia or Ukraine or anything, that the resolution that is going on from the last 4 days was brought in the United Nations Security Council, guys. So the Security Council is also established by the same charter, that is the United Nations Charter of 1945. The purpose of the Security Council is the maintenance of international peace and security, and as you can see how well the United Nations Security Council is maintaining the peace and security from the last 4 days. Let's move from that. The council has its headquarter at New York, guys. The headquarter of the council is at New York, which is having 15 member, out of which 5 you have the permanent member and 10 non-permanent member. Here the games start. Okay, here the game starts for the 5 permanent member. Russia is a permanent member. It has a veto power. So any resolution that will be bringing in the United Nations, definitely it is going to fail, guys. So let's understand. The United Nations Security Council has 15 members, which is the 5 permanent member, and 10 non-permanent member, which is elected for a period of 2 years. As of now, do we have India as a part of the non-permanent member, guys? So the 5 permanent member of the, yeah, very good. The 5 permanent member of United Nations Security Council is US, UK, Russia, France, and China. As the name, as Russia is itself the P5, that is the permanent member, definitely any member that will be, any resolution that will be brought in the United Nations will be vetoed by the Russia. So this is the veto power that Russia had used day before yesterday, guys. It will result in the blockage of the passage of the bill. If any of the 5 permanent members say no to any of the resolution, or any of the 5 permanent members use the veto power, guys, then the bill, the resolution will not be passed. It cannot be initiated only. Okay, so this is what is happening in the United Nations Security Council from the last 2 days. The resolution was the resolution could not be passed because of the veto powers, and the 10 non-permanent member seats are distributed according to the regional basis. They will be coming on a regional basis. Acha, one more thing is that how many times India has been elected to the 10 non-permanent member as a non-permanent member? Anyone? Very good, Mahima. Yeah, very good. Everyone, you are right. It is the 8th time. This is the 8th time when India has been elected to the non-permanent member of United Nations. Okay, so this is the United Nations Security Council, guys. This is very important. You must be thinking that United Nations Security Council ka kaam kya hai? No, guys. It is very important because the resolution for the Russia-Ukraine issue was brought in the United Nations Security Council itself, and Russia used the veto power. So you have to understand these two things. Let's move to the next slide. Now come to the last slide, that is the way forward. So here you can see the question mark. What will be the way forward? What will be happening in the next week or next 15 days? Whether the war will continue for next 1 month or it will be getting done in the next 2 days. No one knows, guys. Russia has demanded 3 things. Russia thought that 2 से 3 दिन war chalega, and then I will be having a control over Ukraine. I will be becoming the big superpower. I will be having the Black Sea. I will be having the Crimea. I will be having the NATO power. I will be becoming a significant power. I will be exporter, importer, and everything. The pipeline that is going from Ukraine will be under me. But this is not what Russia had imagined, that the war would continue for the 4th day and it continues. Okay, this is not what Russia has thought about. Now the way forward is that either the international country, mostly the Western countries and the NATO country, will accepting the 3 demand that has been given by Russia. NATO को आप मत लाइए, Ukraine को आप NATO के अंदर मत लाइए, give Crimea the recognition from the international community, and halt the weapon that is going to the Ukraine. All the Western countries should stop immediately the delivery of weapon in Ukraine. This is one thing that can be done. Second is, we have seen that from today the negotiation between Ukraine and Russia had started at Belarus. Russia is going for a negotiation, guys. This is very important to understand. Russia could have never thought before 2 days that I would be going for a negotiation. Okay, But Russia is going for a negotiation. That is very important thing you have to understand, and that negotiation is going on in Belarus. But the thing that Russia is facing, the sanction, the FIFA, and everything that Russia is facing, Russia could not have even imagined, guys. So this is the question mark slide. That is why, because what is going to happen, no one knows. Any of the three things that we discuss now, it might happen. But which of this will happen, none of us knows. So this is all about the Russia-Ukraine issue. I will be taking the question once again. I will be seeing the chat box. This is all about the Russia-Ukraine issue, guys. That where you have to understand it very importantly. You have to understand it very importantly that from the history you have the present day circumstances that is going on. From the history, how it started and how today we have reached for the 4-day long war. Okay, guys.